Thank you, Derek. What a grand event. I mean, what other event in the first working week of the year could bring 80 of us together? And I'm very happy about that, because when the conference, the annual conference of the party in New South Wales saw fit to formalise friendship groups, ethnic and national friendship groups of the Labor Party, it was alleged by some that this could be a green light to ethnic branch stacking. And people said to me, "Luke, we're very worried about this. You know, this could be some plot by head office for ethnic branch stacking." And I said, no. Look, I worked in head office for the best part of a decade. They wouldn't think of such a thing, would they? But of course, we know in the Australian Labor Party that the first and the most effective ethnic stack was the Irish into the ALP. So look, I want to thank Dermot, Ryan, for bringing us together. So for so long, for 120 years, we've seen the ALP as the party of the Irish working class in Australia. But it took a man prominent in the Irish Labor Party to come here in 2011 to actually kick us all and remind us and prod us to actually formalise the relationship. And this isn't simply the launch of the Irish Friends of Labor. This is the formalisation of the Australian Friends of the Irish Labor Party, Derek. In 2010, I was with a delegation of ALP officials in the UK to help our sister party, the British Labor Party, Gordon Brown, fighting that election where of course they lost power. And there was a function to bring together representatives of all the fraternal parties who were there to either observe the election and or help out. And at day's end, after a long day of worthy talks on the electoral landscape and the state of the government and the warning that Labor was about to lose to the Tories, it was the ALP representatives and the Irish Labor Party representatives who went off to the pub together. A room full of Western European and Scandinavian Social Democrats and Labor parties. It was of course the Irish and the Aussies who went away together. And we met Mark Garrett, who was and is Chief of Staff to the leader of the Irish Labor Party, Eamon Gilmore. You've got to understand the history of the Irish Labor Party. Been condemned to third place at best for 100 years. And at this time they were polling the best they'd ever polled. And was it 35 seats you won at the election, Derek? Yeah, 35 seats, a record result. Labor, if it was opportunist, would have formed the official opposition to rail against cuts. But as Derek said, did the right thing by the country, assumed the responsibility and went into government in a coalition with Fine Gael to actually try and save the country with the IMF in. And I'm pleased to report that the relationship between the Australian Labor Party and the Irish Labor Party is the closest it has ever been. Historically, despite our sense of ourselves as a party of the Irish working class, our fraternal relations, our closest relations were always with the New Zealand Labor Party and the British Labor Party. We never really had a formal relationship with the Irish Labor Party until that meeting in 2010 and then Dermot coming out here in 2011. And Mark Garrett now is Chief of Staff to a Labor leader who's the Tonister, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland, the Foreign Minister of Ireland. David Leitch has been out here, who in our terms would be the Party Secretary of the Irish Labor Party, involved in formal meetings with the British Labor Party, the ALP, the New Zealand Labor Party, the New Democrats from Canada, the DLC from the US Democrats, the ANC from South Africa. So the Irish Labour Party is very much a close part now of that formal relationship between progressive Labour, social democratic parties of the English-speaking West working together in response to that alliance that John Howard and the US Republicans and the British Tories set up when Howard was Prime Minister. That's a very important link as the world becomes more globalised for our side of politics in the Western world to be collaborating, to be working across country lines. So, Derek, you're so welcome. We hope that at the next St Patrick's Day, either this year or next, Ireland always sends out a cabinet minister to Australia for that week. Since Labor went into government, every year the minister who's come from Ireland has been from Fine Gael, so I've been ear bashing, as has Dermot and others, the ambassador of Ireland in Australia. We want a Labor minister. Labor's in government, Labor's an equal partner in government. We want Eamon Gilmore, the leader of the Labor Party, the Foreign Minister of Ireland. There'd be no better speaker for the next function for the Irish Friends of Labor than Eamon Gilmore. So we hope you can take that message back. Before I finish, I of course want to thank the staff of PJ O'Brien's for putting on such a lovely lunch. But if I can just leave you with I just want to leave you with a few short sentences. I've come in off my summer holidays like most of you, so I didn't write a speech, so I dusted off the oration I gave at the Waverley Cemetery a few Easter Sundays ago. Of course, every Irish Taoiseach and every Irish president who comes to Australia makes a pilgrimage to the Waverley Cemetery, to that marvellous memorial to Michael Dwyer, the Wicklow chieftain, and so many Irish patriots, paid for in its entirety by the Irish community in Sydney and Australia. And every year on Easter Sunday, Bishop Cremen says Mass, and after Mass somebody gets to make a speech. One year I was fortunate enough that it was me. Billy's printed it in his paper, and so you can switch off, Billy, but any of you who don't subscribe to the Irish Echo, see Billy, you must do it. Because Billy, of course, anything Deborah O'Neill says, anything Ursula Stevens says, anything I say, is covered in great detail in the Irish Echo. So make sure you subscribe. Look, I just a couple of short paragraphs from that speech to remind us who we are and remind us of our link with Ireland. I said, the Irish sense of fierce independence and dedication to justice and egalitarianism, brought here by the 500,000 Irish who came to these shores between 1788 and 1921, played a huge part in the developing character of Australia. Irish nationalism weaves a thread through the history of this country since white settlement. In 1804, the transported Irish rose against their British captors at a place to the west of Sydney that they called Vinegar Hill, after the site of the climactic 1798 battle in County Wexford. 50 years later, many Irish participated at the Eureka Stockade. The Eureka flag, first flown at the stockade in 1854, was flown over the striking shearers' camps in 1891, and from those strikes grew a Labor Party. The Labor Party reflected many of the traditions and aspirations of the Irish in the Australian colonies. For many, Labor's strongest identity was as the party of the Irish working class. It could not be otherwise. for the Irish worked in the shearing sheds, the mines, the timber camps, and on the wharves from which the Labor Party was born. It might have taken us 120 plus years to formalise an Irish Friends of Labour, but frankly that's because for the first century we never needed to do it, because to be Catholic, to be working class, to be Irish and to be Labor in this country were all one and the same thing. But Derek's laid down a challenge to us. As the Catholic Irish working class in this country is diminishing and people of Irish descent and first generation Irish migrants become more economically successful, more middle class, the Labor Party in Australia now has to earn the support of that community, earn the support of those voters. I'm confident that the Irish Friends of Labour can play a very important role in rising to that challenge. Thank you very much for coming.